Hello, 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 everybody. This is Hyun Park, and I'm coming to you with a third of our 10 webinar series leading up to TEM Expo, Managing Wireless Expenses, Smartphones in the Tween Years. So today we're going to be talking about enterprise mobility and the challenges that have come in just the last month and a half in dealing with this new challenge, and then figuring out 8 key recommendations from the Tween perspective of how to manage this challenge. So you can see we are just starting on this path. There's a lot of information that I want to share with you, both prior to our TEM Expo event and then during the event itself, when we'll have our an entire series of sessions to build upon what we're doing here. Wow, the slide did not render well. Sorry about that. Sometimes when you upload slides, things do not turn out exactly the way you expected. Anyways, so moving on, just to reemphasize this, why are we doing a TEM Expo event? Our firm, Amalgam Insights, we're an industry analyst firm. We don't typically do events, but in this case, we have a very simple goal here. Cut costs, not jobs. I've been through a couple of these recessions now in 2000 and 2008. Each time I feel like I made right personal decisions to be able to advance my career, but I didn't get to share the information I had with everybody. I want to make sure not to make the same mistake this time. There's a lot we can do together as whether you're on the end user side, the consultant side, the vendor side. There are things we can do to help out our stakeholders to cut costs the right way and be able to save more cash to be able to spend on more important things for the business. So that said, what's up with the Tween theme? What the heck is going on here? Well, as you may realize, the iPhone was launched in June 29th, 2017. The next iPhone that comes out, the iPhone 12, will be a teenager if it comes out in the fall time period as scheduled. So right now, the iPhone is a tween. Basically, modern smartphones are in their tween phase, that awkward phase where kids start to really get argumentative and you have no idea what's going on and they stop being kind and nice and sweet like they used to be. So at first, you might wonder, well, why is it going to be an iPhone 12, not an iPhone 13? Because the iPhone itself has gone through some tween issues of its own. You can see just the naming conventions. When we started, it was mostly straightforward. We had an iPhone. On the left side, we skipped iPhone 2, went to 3, 4, 5. And then in the middle, we go to 6 and 7. And then the tween years age just got weird. We got iPhone 8, iPhone 8 Plus, iPhone X, iPhone XR, XS, all sorts of weird stuff going on here. So that's why the next iPhone is going to be an iPhone 12 and not an iPhone 13, even though we're going to get to the teenage years. So that kind of aside, notwithstanding, the modern smartphone is just finishing up its tween years. And this means from a technology perspective that it is in this going through its own awkward phase, trying to figure out whether it is going to be the primary device used for work or whether it's going to what extent it is being supplementing existing technologies. And just when we thought we knew what the rules were, the rules changed, obviously, in March when we all got sent home. And suddenly these devices that were already multitasking as phones and cameras and email and apps now took on this additional purpose in many cases as a bandwidth provider or even a primary connection for those in the house, replacing or working alongside Wi-Fi and your basic networks. So now that we've got this extra task, that means from a cost perspective, we have to figure out what to do with that. So here are my 8 recommendations for cutting mobile costs in the work from home era. First, what are you doing? What the hell is wrong with you? Zombies, lazy slobs, and misfits, yeet. But mom, you have to. Gearing up for the big fight, pit the kids against each other, and a little screen time never hurt. So I'll explain what each of these means, of course, across the rest of But it's funny to think about how enterprise mobility strategy might be matching up with the way that you are dealing with your own tweens at home. Anyways, so, first of all, what are you doing? Oh, I'm sure you're saying this at home as much as I am. But anyways, by what are you doing, what I mean by that is let's figure out what are you doing? What does your actual mobility environment look like? This is the number one recommendation I am providing to companies right now. Benchmark your current March and April usage activity. Figure out what you are doing, because this is going to be important for both immediate cost savings opportunities, being able to cut costs and check your invoices, as well as to provide you with leverage when you are renegotiating contracts in the near future, especially the next 3 to 6 months. You have to know what you're trying to cut before you negotiate the right contract. So a lot of opportunities here, but companies that don't benchmark this activity aren't going to know what they're doing, and they're going to be optimizing based on their pre-COVID assumptions, which is a really bad idea, considering how much longer this quarantine could last, as well as your company's future plans to keep employees at home. This might not be a temporary move for many of your employees. So obviously, benchmark that current activity. Number one recommendation. If you take nothing else from this webinar, please remember that. Next up, so here's a pro tip. Get a free audit and tools. There are a number of telecom expense management providers that are providing free audits and free tools to manage mobile expenses. Here are a couple that I know of, MobiCord as well as BMOX. I'm sure there are others out there. I will be keeping a list of companies that provide free telecom expense and wireless expense resources on my website as well at Amalgam Insights. So please feel free to check there as well if you're looking for help, of course, with other capabilities such as network or cloud spend as well. But this is a good time to be able to get free tools, free audit, a free checkup of where you are from companies that are willing to do so. And there are companies stepping up in this COVID era. Second of all, next step, what the hell is wrong with you? Oh, this is a crazy time for everybody, myself included. This is definitely how I feel many, many days as we are going through this crazy time. And, when you think about that, you want to look at what's happening in your environment and figure out how to identify anomalies, overages, inconsistent usage, inconsistent access. This is where the COVID IT is actually happening. Figure out what is wrong with your bills, what is wrong with your usage, what does not fit into your historical usage patterns, and take a tight look at that, because that's our job right now for those of us who are in the IT management space, especially in this exact time. This is what separates people who are doing their jobs as good stewards versus those who are letting change in IT happen to them. This is our time to be able to grab the reins a little bit and figure out what's going on, figure out what the hell's going on there. Next step, identifying zombies, lazy slobs, and misfits. I think it's really important to remember that things are a mess right now, and as things become a mess, it's important to point out exactly what is most messy. What do I mean by this? The zombies. Those are your zero-use devices. Those accounts and services that are just sitting out there for no good reason other than that they never got shut off. Those are probably out there right now. You might have either devices in a closet or stuck at the headquarters that nobody cares about. This is a good time to start finding those new devices and figure out what to do with them, whether to shut them off or get them as spares or be able to reallocate them. From the slobs, those are these massively overpowered or over-trunked services, over-featured, oversubscribed. These are things where you have massive amount of capacity and are barely using any of it. So you also want to look for things that are massively overpowered compared to what you need. If you've got unlimited data plans and you're using a megabyte a month. Obviously, you want to start reconsidering why all that extra capacity is really necessary. And then the third is around misfits, misused devices and services. One of the most common things that I'm seeing right now is the use of MiFi with limited data plans, and then they start getting cut off at a certain amount of bandwidth because they're being used to stream everything from Zoom to your kids' school classes, and they just weren't built to handle that much bandwidth. They were designed to, at least from a calling plan and a financial perspective, to support email and lighter application usage. So make sure you don't have these mismatches between what the device or the service or the plan was intended to do and what it's actually doing. So find your zombies, slobs, and misfits out there and fix them up once you've got them identified. Next step. Yeet, 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 yeet. If you've got a kid, perhaps in that 9-10-year-old range, this is, yeet is the new something. It's it's definitely the attitude of these kids, and it's hard to stop kids from doing what they want, but they'll do it anyways. Similarly. You've got to check and see with your employees, for the past month, they've done what they've wanted in terms of getting themselves set up for new services, new capabilities. And this is a time to check in with your your general expense management counterparts, the ones literally handling expense management and procurement card expenses, to see what IT expenses might be sneaking in there. We just got past what I call stage 1 of COVID IT, where the point was literally survival. And people just used whatever resources they had in hand to get the job done. But now that we are, call it 6-7 weeks in, we have an idea of how to do work. We might not like the way that we're doing work, but it's kind of what we have. So given that, since we're getting to stages 2 and 3 around securing the business and auditing the environment, it's time to grab a hold of your environment and figure out what did people do when they had no rules, and then start getting that, reining that back, and understanding what people are using, and then figuring out, frankly, if some of these new and customer purchased solutions should actually be corporate supported. Very similar to the bring your own device type of scenario, except now we have bigger bring your own IT challenges that may be in place around apps, around accessories, around video cameras and microphones and other accessories that might be needed to help support your tablets, smartphones, and PCs to be able to support things like web and video conferencing. Next up, but mom, you have to, the obligation when somebody tells you, that kid tells you have to do it because you're the grown-up and you have to support it, even if you don't want to. Problem is sometimes you really do have to. And in this case, what I'm referring to is employees will start saying, oh, well, I've spent this much money and you didn't expect it, but now I want you to pay me back. I want that expense to be covered. And you might say, well, we already have some sort of IT expense supported for that. We already had some sort of other capability in place. But before you push back completely, you might want to check on your obligation to pay for remote work with your regional labor law, your state labor law. So for instance, in California, we have our labor code at 2802 forces us to basically pay for any reasonable expenses. And we have a couple of lawsuits, Cochran versus Schwan, as well as Castro versus ABM, where employees have basically provided lawsuits against their employer saying we had to use our cell phones for work purposes and we weren't reimbursed. And the employees want in both of these cases. So this is definitely a potential concern, depending on your relationships with your employees, or depending on the amount of expense that your employees are starting to gain from doing remote work. This is definitely something to watch out for. So just make sure that you know what the rules are before you simply push back on employees for not using corporate accounts and not being willing to reimburse or work on some sort of reimbursement policy. Next step, gearing up for the big fight. So I don't know about you, but I'm getting a bit stir crazy being at home all the time. Wouldn't mind having a punching bag every once in a while. In this case, a punching bag I'm thinking of, vendor contracts. Prepping for contract negotiations, I think this year is really different because of the shape of your IT usage is fundamentally different as well. It's easy to go into contract season, think about going in 90 days, 120 days in before your contract starts, and then looking at incremental discounts that are happening in each area and then kind of calling it a day and saying that you did a good job because you cut something by 5% or something else by 10%. This is different this year. You need to start looking at your usage categories that have seen large increases, as I mentioned before, and really understand what the opportunity is to cut costs in those specific areas, as not only from a discounting perspective, but potentially from being able to change the products that you're using or the services that you're using or the service plans that you're using. Make sure that you dig deeply into the shape of the usage that you currently have in place, the types of products that are and types of assets that are being ordered, and work tightly both with your account rep on understanding what your options are, as well as work contractually on being able to negotiate the best possible contract. The shape of that contract is going to make a big difference in the amount of money that you're going to be able to save immediately post-contract. So that's a big impact for as soon as the second half of this year, depending on how soon your contract renewals are. And companies that just take contract negotiations for granted or are simply overwhelmed with the amount of work they currently have are going to miss out on a huge opportunity to bring cash flow back into the organization as a result. Next step, when all else fails, pit the kids against each other. Sometimes parenting is hard, so why bother? You can push the kids against each other. And in this case, when I'm talking about wireless specifically, what's the difference really? I'm talking about wired versus wireless trade-offs. Funny thing is with the way that bandwidth works now, wireless connection versus a wired connection, a hotspot versus Wi-Fi. These differences are fairly meaningless at the end user level. Nobody really cares what they're using. However, with your visibility to IT expenses, you can start pushing one type of connectivity against another and figure out what is most cost efficient and then drive that as a policy. Now that you've seen what people have been doing over the past 6-7 weeks, it's time to figure out how to start optimizing this and not to just look at your wireless account. It's not enough to just look within your AT&T wireless or Verizon wireless options. Take a look at what you have from a landline perspective. Take a look at what else might be possible for you to support as you look at your options. And then finally, a little screen time never hurt. Sometimes your kid is just whining. They will not stop. They're relentless. And the right thing to do is just to stop, kind of give in and realize, this battle is just not worth having if we're going to stay alive through the rest of this quarantine. So you're going to lose the battle so you win the war. Likewise, sometimes you have to lose the battle to win the war. As SaaS, mobility, network, and cloud services become more intertwined, the answer might be to shift more spend into one category. This might mean that at the end of the day, either your mobility bill or your cloud bill has to grow so that the rest of them shrink and your IT spend as a whole goes down. As you think about that IT portfolio, think about these trade-offs and think about what is the most cost-effective way to do something rather than simply trying to drive down the cost of every single complex spend category within IT as its own separate silo. You would rather see your entire IT bill go down 20% rather than simply have 10% wins in each category. This means you're going to have to strategize if you have IT broken up into multiple segments in your organization, but this is bigger than simply looking good from a spend category perspective. This is about reducing IT costs as a whole. It's going to be a team effort, and as long as everybody is on board with that team effort, this is going to work. And it's going to be necessary because as you dig through this, you're definitely going to find opportunities across your network, mobility, cloud, and even with some of your apps to be able to find efficiencies and to find easier and cheaper ways of doing things that you might not have seen otherwise. So before we talked about the tween whining issues as the 8 steps, but when we really break it down, the key recommendations I've got here are benchmarking March and April, then identifying usage anomalies, finding zero usage, underused, and misfit services, checking in with your general expense management and procurement card team to figure out what might be sneaking in through the cracks at this point. The bottom row, look at your work from home obligations for reimbursing employees, get ready for contract renewals and for negotiating a different type of contract or different contract clauses than you have traditionally had to make sure that your contract matches up with your actual product services that you are purchasing. Look at wired and wireless trade-offs, and then finally, be ready to lose a battle or a single cost category to win the war of improving IT costs. Those are my key recommendations. This is what I've been telling people over the past month. Now I've told you as well. I hope you tell the rest of your team. And frankly, if you find this useful, I hope that you invite your colleagues and other peers to watch this webinar as an on-demand basis as well. I can't emphasize these enough. This is what's going to position you to win over the rest of 2020 in this remote work environment. So, so this has been a lead up to our June 11th TEM Expo event. This is our contact information if you would like more information about the event itself. And with this, I'd be glad to take any questions that you can ask under the screen itself. I'll just wait a moment for that and see if anything comes in. And if not, thank you for showing up. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any questions, but as you see here, my contact information is available. I would love to answer any questions you might have about this presentation afterwards. And thank you so much for showing up. Have a great day.